Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of 3 Wide here on YouTube. I'm your host, Radney Crawford. This week, we're going to be tackling the topics of Kurt Busch announcing that he will not be coming back to full-time competition in 2023. We'll also be going over the news of Bubba Wallace's suspension after the deal with Kyle Larson at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. So let's dive right into it. Before we get started on today's video, let me tell you about my sponsor, Hunt to Harvest. Now, Hunt to Harvest is a family-owned company that was founded by a veteran and a member of law enforcement. And if you're looking to upgrade your hunter apparel, then hunttoharvest.com is the place you need to go. They now have new designs in their long and short sleeve shirts that are 100% Peruvian cotton, as well as true to fit after one wash. You can also find a selection of performance polos, as well as a wide selection of hats in the Richardson 112 style. And with October being Breast Cancer Awareness Month, they also now have a hat to commemorate that, which you can see next to me. And you can get it all at hunttoharvest.com. That's HUNTTOHARVEST.com. And any orders over $40 gets you free shipping. And while we're on saving money, just enter the promo code at checkout, Radney18923. That's RADNEY 18923. Just click on the link below in the description and enter that code at hunttoharvest.com. So on Saturday, Kurt Busch held a press conference at his home track, Las Vegas Motor Speedway, to announce that he will not be back to full-time competition in 2023. He did leave the door open to coming back on a part-time basis if he's able to get healthy enough. So there's still some stuff he wants to get done. Winning at tracks like Darlington and taking Toyota to victory lane at Michigan is pretty high on his list. So we may not have seen the last of Kurt Busch on the track, but it looks like as far as a full-time basis, that door has closed on Kurt Busch's career. Now, he did say during his press conference that he is at peace with the way things are, but for a driver of Kurt's caliber, you hate to see this part of his career end that way, his full-time career end on that note due to an injury. Just cause with a driver like Kurt, you'd want to see a driver go out on his own terms, kind of have a swan song type season, just for fans to get a chance to go out and see him race one last time and to really enjoy the moments of Kurt on the track. So that one's a tough pill to swallow for fans, but for Kurt to be able to say he wants to focus on his health, he wants to get back to 100%, my hat's off to him on that. A lot of drivers over the years, they probably wouldn't come to that conclusion. They would try and ride it out. So for Kurt to be able to kind of take a step back and say he's just not where he can come back to full time, my hat's off to him on making that decision for himself. And Kurt's had a very successful Cup career. He's definitely had the ups and downs with all this stuff that's went on and off the track. But 34 career wins, a Daytona 500 win with Stewart-Haas Racing. He won the championship for Jack Roush back in 2004 in the first year of the chase for the Cup and what is now become the playoff system we know today. So he's definitely a first ballot Hall of Famer to get into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. But while he may not be a top 5 driver as far as wins or championships go, he is definitely a top 5 driver, in my opinion, on the mark he left in the sport, on the impact he made to whatever team he went to throughout his career. He definitely improved them from what they were. And looking back over his career at the start of it, when he was younger, it definitely was a controversial career at the beginning for Kurt. And we won't get into all the details, all the incidents that's went over his career. That would not be... That's not what we're here for. We're here to kind of just point out the highlights of it, and the growth that he showed throughout that career is incredible, and the maturity he gained throughout it. He went from being at one time the most disliked driver on the track by fans to probably being the most respected veteran that's out there on the track. And his first stop was with Jack Roush Racing, driving the 97 car. He then makes the move to Penske, driving the 2 car, then the 22 car for Penske, where he had the infamous incident with Dr. Jerry Punch in the garage area during the Homestead Miami race, the season finale. That led to him losing that ride, but he was able to hop on board with Phoenix Racing and kind of go through a rebuild of his career. And he did an amazing job handling all that and pushing through all that controversy, pushing through everything that he went through, and came out with the better of it. At his stop in Phoenix Racing, he didn't run the whole season for him. He made the transition to Furniture Row there towards the end of the year, but he definitely picked up that team and put it on his shoulders and did an incredible job with that team. Phoenix Racing, an underfunded team, and he took them to new heights they hadn't seen before, at least consistency-wise, and able to contend for wins. He had 1 top 5, 2 top 10s. You look at the stat line, that may not seem like much, but he was in the running for some wins throughout the year at Sonoma, where it was probably one of his strongest runs, was in the mix until he had a broken rear end on the car and was still able to bring it to a 3rd place finish. He had a strong run at Talladega in the fall where he got spun out there getting towards the end of the tri-oval. But again, that's always Kurt's MO, it seems like, throughout his career. Any stop he's made, he makes a team instantly better, and that was no different when he made his next stop at Furniture Row Racing, which at the time was a Chevy team. They hadn't become a Toyota team and aligned themselves with Joe Gibbs Racing at the moment. But looking at what Kurt did in that season, it definitely laid the foundation of the dominant team they would become just a couple years later with Martin Truex Jr. He didn't get the team into victory lane, but he brought them more consistency. He made them a threat week in and week out to finish top 10, to finish top 5, and was in the running for some wins. Going into his 1 full-time season with Furniture Row Racing, at the time they only had 1 win, 3 top 5s, and 8 top 10s to their name as a team. And that was mainly with Regan Smith, who did a great job himself with Furniture Row, but Kurt took them to the next level as far as consistency. In that first year, he was able to finish with 11 top 5s, 16 top 10s, and gave Furniture Row Racing their first top 10 points finish ever. And while it was disappointing to see him not take it to victory lane, he definitely left his mark with them, and they took that and ran with it and became the championship contending team that they were with Martin Truex Jr. And that's what Kurt did throughout his career. As I said, he would go to a team and elevate it and make this team, no matter who it was, into a race-winning contender. Maybe not week in and week out, but at Kurt's strong tracks like the road courses like Sonoma, at tracks like Daytona, Talladega, even some of the short tracks, he could get the most out of the car and give them strong runs. And in 22 years of racing, he won a race in 19 of those 22 full-time years. The only seasons he did not go to victory lane was his rookie season in 2001, the year he was with Phoenix Racing, and the next year with Furniture Row. Other than that, he was a constant, picture in victory lane. He could rattle off. He was guaranteed to get 1 win every year, especially over the last few years. And you can already see the difference he's making with 23XI. You see how that team stepped up its game with both his team as well as Bubba Wallace's. They were able to sweep the races at Kansas this season. And that's what everybody, including myself, was expecting when he signed with 23XI Racing. We knew it would be good for Bubba's career. We knew it would be good for that team to help them take that next step up. And there's no doubt that even though he didn't get a full season in with this team, that he has and he still will, I'm sure, be a part of that team and help them become even stronger and contend for more wins and get them to the point where they're up there running for championships. And there's just a couple more things I want to talk about Kurt before we move on to the next topic. I loved Kurt's driving style. He was very aggressive, but not over the top, over aggressive. He knew his limits for the most part. Every driver has these moments in their career where they do something they wish they hadn't or overreact. But Kurt, overall, you look over his history, 2 of his biggest, rivals were Jimmy Spencer and Jimmy Johnson. And I went back and looked over these highlights from his battles with them, and it just kind of stuck with me. Kurt was a guy who was going to truly give what he got. You look at the deal with Jimmy Spencer at Bristol in 2002 where Kurt won his first race. And Jimmy Spencer, he's a good short track racer. He got a little, he'd already had a run-in with Kurt the year before at Phoenix and had a little bump and run with Kurt at that race just earlier. And Kurt got back to him, didn't wreck him, didn't go over the top. He just gave back what Jimmy gave him and bumped him up the track, a typical Bristol move at the time, the bump and run, and went on to win his first race. Now, obviously, that rivalry just built over the next year and a half. But then you also look at the Jimmy Johnson deal. Jimmy Johnson was another big rivalry of Kurt's. And I mainly watched the Pocono race where on the last lap coming out of turn 2, Kurt was underneath Jimmy and they were running tight. They're running for 3rd place. Jimmy coming off the corner kind of turns down on Kurt. Don't know if that was kind of intimidation tactic or what, but he made a little move at Kurt, and Kurt came right back and did the same thing to Jimmy, and that's what they did down the back straightaway. And after the race, Jimmy wasn't happy about it. He went to Kurt's car and wanted to talk to him about it, and Kurt gets out and he makes the move, like makes the hand signals, hey, you turned towards me, I gave it right back to you, and that's all there was to it. And even in his interview, he's talked about how good hard racing it was. It was clean. He came at me, I came back at him, and even asked the question, why can't we race hard, race like that, put on a good show for the fans and not have a problem with it? And I really respect Kurt for that. He gave what he got, and not a lot of drivers can say that, at least to the level that Kurt did. So, and another thing that struck with me was Kurt with the fans. I was fortunate enough to go to the 2007 Daytona 500. This was the year where they put in the new windows in the garage where you could see the teams working on the cars, and it had a slot where drivers could come up and sign autographs. And the time that I was in the infield, I went with a friend and his family, and another family was with us. And Kurt was the only driver that I saw coming up and signing autographs for the fans. Not saying nobody else did, but just during my time in the infield, Kurt was the only one that come up that I saw doing that. And I was able to get an autograph from Kurt. Fans were just all around his window, and he would take the time to sign every autograph he could. He'd stop for a second, look up, smile for pictures, because you had fans wanting to get pictures of him. And he was real generous with his time and seemed to really enjoy having that connection with the fans. And then that was the day of the Xfinity race. The next day of the Daytona 500, this is when all the drivers had their own merchandise haulers set up. And the way they would do things was, if you were the first 100 people in line, you could get a ticket to get an autograph from Kurt. One of the a driver would come to the merchandise trailer and sign autographs for the first 100 people that got tickets. So Kurt did that, and when we're making our way out from the infield to go to our seats, Kurt went through his line. He was just kind of hanging out with the workers at the merchandise truck, talking with them. And mom of the other family I was with, her son was unable to make the race, and he was a Kurt Busch fan, and she had a Kurt Busch hat. And I won't forget, she went up there and just asked Kurt for an autograph, and Kurt didn't kind of shoo her away. No, I'm not doing that. And didn't even kind of just do a whole, I really don't want to do this, but I will. He absolutely went up there, signed it, happy to do it. I believe he may have even done a picture with her. I can't remember, but he was very courteous, very generous with his time and doing that. And that really struck with me. And Kurt mentioned in his press conference how he's going to go talk to Fox Sports about possibly doing some TV. And I hope he is able to land that role to be in the sport in some capacity, because Kurt is definitely a voice and a personality that the sport can't afford to lose. So now we go to the big topic of the weekend, and that was Bubba Wallace when he right-reared Kyle Larson into the outside wall on the front straightaway after being run up into the wall by Larson out of turn 4. Bubba has been suspended for one race. He will not be at Homestead, Miami. John Hunter Nemechek will be driving that car. And I felt like this was the right call by NASCAR to suspend him for one race. They didn't penalize him any points. They didn't fine him. Just simply, you're going to sit at the house for this week, and we'll see you when you come back the next. And like I said, I feel like that's the right call. With all the safety issues in this new car, it seems like NASCAR had to step in and say, we can't be having drivers doing that. Because if Christopher Bell hadn't been driving by right when Larson was going against the wall, that would have been a rear impact and the worst hit Larson could have had into that wall, and no telling how that would have turned out for him. So I feel like NASCAR had no choice. They had to send a message to these drivers that they're not going to tolerate it. Now, I've seen a lot of posts on social media about people saying, well, is the boys have it at it era gone? And listen, if you think right rearing a guy into a wall, I don't care what track it is, what series, what generation of car it is, if you think right rearing a driver head on towards the wall, whichever end he ends up hitting, if you think that's boys have at it, then I'm sorry, in my opinion, you're not a true fan of the sport. That's dangerous, it's irresponsible. I understand tempers are going to get high, and in some sense I can understand drivers showing their displeasure, they'll come up and hit them square in the rear under caution, or they might spin them out going to the next corner if you're, I won't want to say just at a short track, but you'll see it a lot there. There's other ways drivers have shown their displeasure. And there have been instances, especially this season, where this right-rearing drivers into the wall has happened. And while those drivers haven't been suspended, there was definitely outcry about it. A lot of fans were not happy with it. They did call for the drivers to get suspended, but NASCAR chose not to. So I feel like this is a new precedent being set by NASCAR. Where the line in the sand is, I think, is right-rearing right now. We'll see how that turns out. But the right message is being sent, I believe, by the sport. And like I said, this wasn't your typical driver showing his displeasure. You had a driver, Bubba Wallace, get mad, and I understand him being mad. I understand him being upset, but he let that get the best of him. He let his emotions get the best of him, and he made a poor choice. And that's it, plain and simple. It's nothing. This isn't an anti-Bubba rant or anything like that. A lot of drivers have done this. A lot of drivers fall into this trap. You look at Kyle Busch, the deal with Ron Hornaday at Texas, where he put him head on in the wall during caution at the truck race, and NASCAR sat him for that race. Jeff Gordon at Phoenix with Clint Boyer. NASCAR didn't penalize him, didn't suspend him, but he should have been. So Bubba's no different than any other driver. This happens, but I just like, the main thing is the safety of this car. You can't afford to have this happen, because the sport's already got a little bit of a black eye on it for how many, you got two drivers out right now with concussions. Kurt Busch, Bubba Wallace's teammate, and Alex Bowman, Kyle Larson's teammate. This was not going to be a good look either way for NASCAR, however they responded to the spin by Bubba Wallace. NASCAR was going to be in a lose-lose spot. Whether they announced it was a suspension, 50% of the fans were going to be happy, or that's fair, that's a good call. The other 50% were going to be mad. This is unfair. NASCAR's just going after Bubba Wallace. And that's how we've seen it. And the same could be said if they had just fined him $100,000 and docked him 50 points. Half the fans would have said, okay, that's good, whatever, that's with the precedent. The other half would have said what he did was reckless and dangerous. They'd have been mad. He needs to be suspended. So I applaud NASCAR for not letting the outside noise affect their judgment on this one, as far as I believe. And they got it right. Bubba Wallace is going to be suspended for one race. But now the ball is in NASCAR's court. They have to show some consistency with this call. And they haven't been the best at consistency at times, for sure. But now the question is, where is the line? If we see drivers right rear one another into the wall, is that going to be an automatic suspension? It's going to be expected now. So NASCAR's got to stick to their guns, and they have to stick with this precedent now that has been set. Now, and I'm just saying, get ready for when we go to these short tracks, like we got Martinsville coming up in a couple weeks. When we go back to these short tracks, road courses, anywhere, and if something happens where a driver retaliates, like we've seen before at all these short tracks, say Joey Logano gets knocked out of the way by Chase Elliott. They go in the next corner, Joey Logano spins Chase Elliott. There's going to be an outcry. They're going to say Joey Logano should be suspended because he retaliated against Chase Elliott, and NASCAR suspended Bubba Wallace, so Joey Logano should be suspended as well. That's going to be the next outcry. So NASCAR, again, will have to block out the noise of the outside. Do not let the fans control the narrative. Don't let the media control the narrative. NASCAR has to police its own sport and stay consistent with it. Now, me personally, I would rather see drivers settle it after the race, whether it be on pit road, behind the haulers, in the garage, wherever, in the parking lot outside the track. It's just getting to a point now, let's quit using our cars as weapons. Number one, it's dangerous. We can't be having that. Number two, you got a lot of guys that work long hours during the week on these cars and spending time away from their families, putting in some hard hours to get these cars ready. They do not deserve to see you going out there and tearing up their stuff just because, you're throwing a temper tantrum, basically. And you had Kyle Petty, who is kind of brought some attention to himself with his comments on the show Motor Mouths, where he was commenting saying Bubba Wallace should be suspended for the rest of the season. He said when you add in all the factors from him right-rearing Kyle Larson into the wall, getting out of the car, walking down the track as far as he did, which is, there's, I believe, a rule against that, not getting in the ambulance, putting hands on officials, shoving Kyle Larson around right in front of everybody. He believes that should be more than a one-race suspension. And he also pointed out the fact that we have crew chiefs, we have jackmen, we have tire changers that are sitting at home for 4 weeks because a tire got loose and rolled away. But yet we have an instance like this where you have drivers spinning each other into the walls, putting them into harm's way unnecessarily, and they're just being sent home for one race, and basically trying to make sense of all of it. And it doesn't, but still, most people just hear the comment of Kyle Petty saying he needs to be suspended for the rest of the season, and fans have just been in an uproar about it. But here is where I will defend Kyle Petty. Number one, Kyle, he is a very opinionated former driver, now announcer, and has no problem sharing his opinion and standing by it. But he's consistent. He has done this same thing for Matt Kenseth when he's put Joey Logano into the wall at Martinsville back in 2015. He did the same thing when Carl Edwards went out on the track and wrecked Brad Keselowski intentionally at Atlanta. So you may be mad, you may disagree with Kyle Petty, but he is consistent with his opinions. And I understand what he's saying, which is, the way I take it, why are we sending these crew members home for 4 weeks for what is supposed to be a safety issue, but yet we're suspending a driver for also a safety issue for only one race? So let me know in the comments what you think. If you agree with the suspension, what do you think the penalty should have been? Do you think it was harsh enough? Give me your thoughts on it. Like I've said many times, I believe NASCAR got it right. Bubba has had moments off the track with Alex Bowman on the Roval where he goes and throws water in his face. He's shown moments where his emotions get the better of him, just like everybody else, but he has not done anything to this level. I understand with the one race suspension, I don't think there's any need to go more than one race at this moment. If you want to do kind of a tier chart, I get that, but I believe the one race suspension is good enough right now. It gets a message across, at least to Bubba and the other drivers, what NASCAR will and won't tolerate. So thank y'all for joining me and listening along, watching along. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button before you get off this channel, and also click on the link below, go to anchor.fm/3wide3 and subscribe to my weekly podcast that comes out every week Monday nights after the race. Also, don't forget hunttoharvest.com. The link is there as well in the description, HUNTTOHARVEST.com. And that promo code to get those savings is underneath that description as well. So y'all have a wonderful rest of your week. Get ready. It's going to be a fun race weekend in Homestead, Miami. I love this track. 1.5 miles. It's going to do great with this next gen car. It's going to be quite the show to watch. And we'll see y'all next time.